At this stage in my hobby journey, I've made more dwarves than Aule the Smith. I've made goat riders. I've made Champions of Erebor on goat. I've made a Moria expedition. And I've even made a zombie Deadmarsh Spectre. As dwarves are my favourite fantasy race, I decided to make 4 more. Here are the remaining Champions of Erebor. Remember, subscribe for more content and check out our back catalogue. Let's get into it. The 4 dwarves I'm going to be making today: Bofur, Bifur, Gloin, and Nori. The basic outline for this was to use the plastic Thorin's Company kit to make heavily armoured Champions of Erebor. 2 of the conversions are very simple, and 2 are a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to sandwich the simple ones in between the complicated ones. Let's start off with our first complicated one, Bofur. Now, Bofur, being a very rotund adventurer, would need a very large breastplate. For this, I used the Rambuck Raiders kit from Fireforge Games. It comes with plenty of very large breastplates as they are dwarves in heroic scale. The breastplate was glued to the legs of a Grimhammer dwarf. The head was removed in 2 parts, first starting with the vast majority of the head, stopping at the chin. And then I removed the rest of the very long beard separately so it could be glued on later. The big lad would need some arms now. I decided to use the Perry Miniatures Knight's Arms. This is because they're much larger and thicker. I would need to source a weapon, a flail to be precise. I used this length of chain from the fine-cast Witch King's flail. For the flanged head, I decided to use this Rambuck Raiders mace. This was glued on with super glue. I was honestly at a loss at what to do with the left hand, so I decided to snip off the left hand from the original Thorin's Company bomber and let him have the ladle. There was very little green stuff work needed, I just needed to blend the beard into the rest of the face to make it look natural. I made these conversions at the same time as I made my Moria expedition conversions, and so they sat there for quite a while before I got round to painting them. Part of the reason for this is because I didn't really know what scheme to go for. The only thing I knew for sure is that I didn't want any of the miniatures to have the same paint scheme. I wanted them to all be unique. This is because in the films they all have very unique armour sets, but I wanted more colour than you see in the films, which is a bit monotone. With a quick Google search, I managed to find this piece of artwork here, with the bomber sporting a really nice rich green colour. And I used copper for the rest of the armour. I find the green really nicely contrasts against his orange beard. Let's transition now to the other ginger, and the first simple conversion, Gloin. I took inspiration from the official model, which is essentially just the same, just with different shoulders and arms. I figured if Gloin won't make an effort, then neither will I. The original Gloin from the Thorin's Company kit comes with 2 axes where he's flurling them around. I used the hobby saw to remove both his arms. I was sure to keep as much of the original detail on the head and the body as I possibly could. Most of this conversion work was done in the preparation and the dry fitting, constantly lining him up against what I thought would be a good fit for the Grimhammer arms. Once I was happy with the choice in arms, I removed them from the sprue with some clippers, cleaned them up, and then glued them in place using plastic glue. The last thing to do was to remove a hammerhead and use one of his spare axe heads to replace it. That is really how simple this conversion is. For the paint job then, I just went for a classic Gloin look, the red and the browns, a bit of silver and a bit of copper mixed in. I was inspired by this piece of artwork for the paint job, but not for Gloin, for his brother Oin. Next up is the second of my easy conversions, and this is Bifur. The Bifur miniature from the Thorin's Company kit already comes without his arms assembled. This would make removing the head very easy. All I had to do was use my hobby saw. I sawed horizontally at the neck and then vertically up the beard, making sure that all of the detail was intact. After pulling the head off, I managed to clean the back with a pair of clippers. I was then able to remove a Grimhammer's head in essentially the same way as I did with Bifur. I glued the head down with some plastic glue. It essentially fit perfectly. I was able to take my time and really align it to make it look like a very natural pose. Bifur, Champion of Erebor, comes armed with a two-handed axe. And of course, Bifur from the Thorin's Company has his boar spear, which is a spear and a two-handed axe. I really love the shape of this weapon. Its kind of triangular blade looks really dwarven, and therefore I wanted to use this on the model. I did toy with the idea of just gluing the arms on, but it didn't quite look right. He would need some more heavily armoured arms. I snipped off the arms at the wrist and managed to attach it to two Grimhammer arms with plastic glue. Whilst the plastic glue was setting, I used some more plastic glue to glue the shoulders in place, and therefore I could change the pose as it dried. And that's pretty much all there was to it. The only thing that remained was some gap filling at the shoulders and the wrist. For the cloth, I really like the Bifur depiction in this drawing. That kind of mustard yellow. I wanted to contrast the yellow with some blue, just like the depiction of Bofur next door. Therefore I decided to use a blue metallic by glazing over some Talisar blue on top of a metallic base coat. Really like how the paint scheme came out on this one. Last up is the second most complicated one, which is Nori. Just like with all the others, he was clipped off the sprue and his head was removed using a hobby saw. I felt that a lot of the dwarven depictions of armour have a vaguely Greco-Roman look, so I used this Spartan hoplite sprue for the basis of the torso. I used the Grimhammer legs to create a wider, stouter, dwarf-like appearance for this miniature. After attaching the torso to the legs, I then was able to glue the head in place. To represent the Weapon Master special rule, I decided to give Nori his two knives from his plastic Thorin's Company kit. The tab was clipped off of the back and it was glued in place on his back, looking like the strap on over his shoulders was holding it in place. Nori, Champion of Erebor, is armed with a shield and a club. I recycled the club head from his Thorin's Company version. Seeing as I had two hands spare from Gloin, I decided to utilise them as Nori's hands. Drilling out the bottom of the club, I was able to pin it in place with some plastic glue. And removing the other axe hand, I was able to fit this spare shield I had from the Dwarven Reclaimer set. With the miniature pretty much all finished up, aside from a few gap filling, I decided to move on to the paint job. The artwork has him with this really cool purple outfit, so I decided to replicate that with his cloth. I used bronze and silver details to contrast the purple. All of the miniatures were based in the same way I based my other Champions of Erebor on goat. The technique for this can be found in the video linked above. What do you think of them as an ensemble? I really like how they turned out. I really like how different they are in terms of colour and in terms of style. Like the video if you liked it, dislike the video if you disliked it. Check us out in our Discord. We come up with really cool ideas. We've got a really cool bunch of guys in there right now. We bounce ideas off each other. If you did feel like giving us a tip, you could jump down to the Buy Me a Coffee. But honestly, a subscription if you haven't done it already, and a like is more than enough. Let me know if you have any ideas that you want to see us tackle. I've been Joe from Windish Wargamers. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.